Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. We have Sailfish Royalty presenting. CEO Cesar Gonzalez is here. He's going to walk us through the story and answer some questions. Before we get started, I will remind everyone that this presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can check them out on the company's disclosure on their website. And there will be a Q&A section at the end, so feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box, or you can email them to me at deborah@adcap.ca. And with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce Sailfish Royalty Corp. And CEO Cesar Gonzalez. Hi, Cesar.
Hello, Deb, and thank you guys for tuning in. You're probably one.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say thanks for joining us for Silver Week. It's exciting.
Yeah. The timing was pretty good, Deb. You missed it by a couple of weeks when we had that nice run up in the price, but I think that was just a precursor to what's to come. The long-term chart for silver looks great, and for people that are wondering why Sailfish Royalty Corp is giving a presentation during Silver Week, we happen to have a silver asset which is inside of this company, but it won't be for long. We're working on a spinout or other monetization event. And I'm so glad that Deb invited us to join this conference because as a standalone asset, the Gavilanes silver property, which is what we have down in Mexico, I think would fit right in with a lot of the companies that have presented this week as part of the Silver Week. So thank you, Deb.
So why don't you walk us through the story a little bit?
Sure. So I'll start with an overview of what Sailfish is, and then I'll spend quite a bit of time going over Gavilanes. And then I'll open it up to Q&A, which is the most fun part of all these presentations. So Sailfish was started, I'll just go to the timeline here. Sailfish was started in 2014 as a private, wholly owned entity inside of the predecessor of Mako Mining Corp. I'm sure a lot of you guys have listened to my partner, Akiva Leisman, present on Mako, very high-grade deposit in Nicaragua, which Sailfish has a royalty and stream on. So this company was inside of what was formerly called Marlin Gold Mining. Today it's called Mako. And we spun it out when we were able to execute on a transaction to acquire a second royalty. That's the Tocantinzhino royalty on an asset in Brazil. And then it went public in early 2018. I remember the day it started trading. It was a couple days before my birthday. So it was a pretty exciting time in 2018. And since that time, we have acquired other royalties in Mexico and in Nevada through the restructuring of the stream, the original stream on the San Albino asset in Nicaragua, and then also through the acquisition of a company called Terraco Gold Corp in the summer of 2019. So there are a lot of dates on this slide. There are a lot of notes as to what we've done, including share buybacks, the raising of debt, the repayment of debt. We've been busy, and everything was done with a purpose. All of our deals were underwritten to very strict standards because of our largest shareholder, Wexford Capital. And here we are today with a diverse royalty company on the verge of receiving cash flow from the San Albino asset in Nicaragua. This will be a significant royalty for Sailfish. Today's prices and at the production rate that Mako is anticipating for the year, it's going to be about $1.6 million in 2021, and that will grow. And that will grow significantly, over the years once they get ramped up down there in Nicaragua. So today, Sailfish is Nevada, Brazil, Nicaragua, and Mexico on the royalty front. And then we also have, over the course of the many structurings and restructurings that we've done over the years, we also were able to get a silver asset in Mexico. I'll go to this slide here that shows the royalty portfolio. But also we have, in this lighter shade of blue, the early stage silver property in a prolific mining district, which is known as Gavilanes. So this is what I will spend a little more time on later in the presentation, but I just wanted to give you guys a precursor. So taking a step back, this is an important slide. It's got my picture. I'm wearing the same jacket in there. And it's got Akiva and Brian McKenzie Akiba is the co-founder along with myself. He is now the executive chairman of the company, used to be the CEO, and Brian McKenzie, who's our CFO. And the three of us run this company. We have a controller in the British Virgin Islands that helps Brian, but for the most part, it's the three of us, and it's a very lean structure. Akiba and I take no cash salary. Everything that we get in the form of compensation is in the form of stock options, shares. And we're doing this because we want to create a very shareholder-friendly royalty company. We have been buying, relative to the shares outstanding, a tremendous amount of our stock over the last 2 years. We plan to continue to do so. And we're even entertaining the idea of a dividend once the San Albino royalty gets up and running. So this is a company built by shareholders for shareholders. It's a very important part of our story. And we think that royalty companies are great vehicles to return cash, whether it's in the form of share buybacks or dividends, but to return cash on royalties to investors. So we're not running this as a lifestyle company. This is not an empire building exercise. This is an exercise to get value back in the hands of shareholders, of which we are among the largest. So here's an overview of the capital structure. As of today, we have about 75 million shares outstanding. We have the capacity to buy back another 1.2 million shares on the existing buyback that expires in July. So don't be surprised if that share count goes down by that amount between now and then. And as I mentioned, we have the support of Wexford Capital, our largest shareholder, who is also the largest shareholder of Mako, and management and directors. So this is presented on a fully diluted basis. So the in-the-money options are included in here. And with that, management and directors are about 10% of the company. And then we also have the support of Mr. Paul Stevens out of California and Hawaii. He's been a mentor to my partner, Akiba, and a very valuable sounding board, excellent network. He's got an amazing track record investing in what he likes to call orphaned companies. And if you notice, usually on this slide, you'll see a section for research coverage. And we don't have that. There's not one analyst that covers Sailfish. It's not something I'm proud about. It's just something that is actually an issue for us. It has to do with the fact that we haven't raised any equity. We did a rights offering last summer, and that was backstopped by Wexford, primarily to refund the debt that Wexford put in when we were acquiring the Terraco, gold company, which was the primary asset there was a Spring Valley royalty. So, is this ideal for a publicly traded company to have no research coverage? Absolutely not. Is it an opportunity for new shareholders to do a little bit of research on their own and find value, attend conferences like these, ask me questions? Absolutely. And we have a lot of optionality with Sailfish. This is a company that is on the verge of receiving cash flow from a significant royalty, buying back shares, potentially paying a dividend in the future. And also the M&A activity has been very robust in our sector in royalties. The buy and build strategy has worked for some, and that's not lost on us. At some point, our assets, our company might be a fit for a larger player. So there's a lot of optionality here with what we've built, and I'm just excited with the timing of everything, especially with regards to Gavilanes. As part of the Silver Week presentation that Deb and her team put together. And with that, I will cut over to a slide, which we put all the way in the back. Maybe I should move it up because this is becoming more and more important as we get closer to finalizing our updated resource on this project in anticipation of being able to spin it out or sell it, or we're open to ideas. So we haven't finalized our plans yet, but more than likely this will be part of a spin out and a combination with another asset to get scale and to have a more robust company from day one. But Gavilanes is a property we own 100%. It was transferred to Sailfish. It's actually in the process, the formal process of being transferred. In Mexico, things take a while, but this was transferred to Sailfish as part of the restructuring on the San Albino gold stream that took place in 2018 when Marlin and Golden Ray merged to form Mako. And we got this property for no money, essentially. It was our responsibility to make good on the concession taxes, and so that's what we've been doing. And we've been waiting for the right time to spend some real money to update the resource and reinterpret the drill hole data that's available to us. The previous owner was Santa Cruz Silver, and they put in 47 holes, about 9,600 meters, and with that amount of drilling, they were able to come up with a resource. And I will caveat this by saying this is a historical resource that is currently being updated. And this morning I had a call with the team that's updating it. We're using MDA out of Reno, Nevada, and also working with Resource Geosciences out of Arizona and Mexico. And they are together creating an update to this resource. And it's very interesting what we're seeing so far. And I can give you guys a hint on what's coming out. So the way this was modeled, and then let me take a step back. Historically, this resource had a total of, if you can do this math here very quickly, it's about 34.5 million ounces thereabouts of silver equivalents, with the silver equivalent grade being 200 grams per ton for the indicated category and about 163 grams per ton for the inferred category. And that's on a silver equivalent basis. And here you have the silver only grades. So when I talk about this deposit with other corporates, they say, okay, those are all right grades. And with silver doing what it's doing, this could be a project. It's early, and so it requires a lot more drilling. This is an exploration project. It's not ready to be put into any kind of scoping analysis to determine if what kind of mining methods or anything like that it will be used. This is still in the exploration stage. But what we're finding in our work with MDA and Resource Geosciences is that the tons that were included in this resource estimation at a 75 gram per ton silver equivalent cutoff are materially higher than what the reality is when you start modeling this deposit using the specific metal and vein domains. So when you model the silver and the silver veins separate from some of the base metals, which sometimes don't run together. This is a very important point. So when we isolate the silver, we're actually finding that the grade is materially higher of the silver only. And when I use the word materially, I'm talking, in the 80-90% range. The tons are going down, but because the silver is going up more, we actually are getting close to the same ounce, numbers in terms of the estimation. So it's early days, and I caveat this by saying, the work we've done so far is still work in progress, but very encouraging, because what I've learned over my decade of evaluating mining assets across the world and building and operating mines, in Mexico and now in Nicaragua, is that grade matters. The old adage is that grade is king. I used to, when I was younger, think, oh yeah, that's one of the components, but there are other things: cheap electricity, access to infrastructure, the right people. Those are all very important as well. But grade really does matter, and we're seeing that firsthand with Mako, where we have one of the highest grade open pit mines on the planet. The margin of error is tremendous. Grade can really make a mediocre team look fantastic, a challenging jurisdiction look workable. Grade works wonders. And what we're seeing with the new modeling of this resource is that the grade is dramatically higher, which is music to my ears. It's a very exciting time for this project, and as we continue to model it, and taking a step back, you can see a picture here of the terrain. This is a mountainous part of Mexico. It's in Durango, but it is a very prolific silver and gold district. Our closest neighbor, that's a producer, is the San Dimas mine, a prolific mine. It's been in operation continuously for decades. It is today owned by First Majestic Silver. Many of you may remember it when it was under Primero Mining, and before that it was inside of Gold Corp, and before that it was inside of Luismin. So a very important mine to Mexico's rich mining history. We're 25 kilometers to the east, and we have a district scale land package at about 13,500 hectares. That's across 11 concessions. As I said, we're in the process of updating the resource in anticipation of being able to spin this asset out or monetize it in some other form or fashion. Although I think a spin out is the ideal way of maximizing value for shareholders. And from what we see in the modeling thus far, the grade of this deposit will be dramatically higher for the silver specific. We're still working on the other domains that include the other metals. There's gold, there's copper, there's lead and zinc. So this is a polymetallic deposit, but at the end of the day, the silver carries the grade here, and that's going up. The timing for that update, we're hoping to have something out by the end of March, but definitely by first parts of April, to be able to talk about the new numbers and to give firmer plans on how we plan to monetize this or maximize value for shareholders. So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions. I know the first part about the royalty company was brief. I wanted to focus on Gavilanes because it's Silver Week and this is a silver property. And now I'm opening it up for Q&A.
Thank you, Cesar. Just a reminder, there's a Q&A box at the bottom if anyone wants to input any questions. I guess just talking a little bit about your strategy with Gavilanes. So in terms of combining it with another asset, can you give us a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah, we were careful last year when we talked about Gavilanes to just focus on Gavilanes. But I think at this point, we've made some inroads into combining it with an asset that is owned by Wexford Capital that at one point was inside of Marlin. It's an asset that the investors who have followed us around, whether it's at Mako or Sailfish, should be familiar with. It's the Commonwealth property in Cochise County, Arizona. That's southeast Arizona, about an hour outside of Tucson. And it's a silver and gold property. So, the silver component to this, in fact, when it was up and running in the late 1800s at its peak, it produced more silver than a mine that everybody knows about and talks about, not because of the silver, but because of the gun battles that occurred. But the Tombstone, the town had a very prolific mine that produced silver. Well, Commonwealth at its peak was bigger than Tombstone. The difference is Tombstone had the gun battle at the OK Corral, and Commonwealth had a soap shop that it didn't have the same history. It was a little more domesticated place. It never got to the size of Tombstone and didn't have the the excitement, but the mine was bigger, and it was a silver mine historically. They also produced gold as a byproduct at that point. Today, because of the ratio between gold and silver and the recoveries in that are easier to recover via heap leach, Commonwealth has been thought of as a gold, more of a gold asset than a silver asset. But we're working on that, and we think that installing some infrastructure at Commonwealth that will allow for higher silver recoveries. Talking about a mill, nothing fancy. We're not talking about new technology. This is just the application of a mill in conjunction with a heap leach can add a lot of value in recovering silver, especially at today's silver prices. So that's our thinking is Gavilanes, Commonwealth, Southwest U.S., Northern Mexico, both historic districts with large land packages that will allow for plenty of exploration of satellite deposits to really get some excitement, some scale around this new company. The last thing we want to do is push out Gavilanes on its own and not have the ability to fast track development, for example, like we do at Commonwealth. Commonwealth is on 100. Well, the historic mine, the Pierce Hill mine, is on patented land. That means that it's owned, both the mineral and the surface rights, by us, or I should say by Wexford, and that's important, especially under the new administration here in the U.S., where federal lands are getting tougher to do work on for certain types of activities. We don't have to worry about that. Commonwealth can be developed on a quick timeline relative to other projects, and having that ability, that flexibility, with the exploration upside of Gavilanes, I think is a really good mix. So rather than sending each one of those out on their own, we're thinking putting them together, attracting management that sees the value in having the optionality of both, and also the shareholders who get to enjoy a diversification in having two assets versus one.
Okay, thank you. I know the point of this was to focus on the silver part of the company, but we have done a couple webinars for Cabral in the past, and they have a property adjacent to Tocantinzhino. So I know some of our viewers wouldn't mind getting an update on what's going on at that asset. Sure.
And everything we hear on TZ comes from the company. We as royalty holders are limited in our access to information, but there is a lot of information that's publicly available on TZ, from AIFs to technical reports to presentations. In the Q3 call that Eldorado had, they had a section that talked about assets for sale. They have some projects in Greece and then Tocantinzhino, which they have put up on the chopping block. And I would want nothing more than to have a press release come through my inbox saying that TZ has been sold to an operator who wants to build it. Royalties are most valuable when they're paying cash, and what we have here is a 3.5% NSR that the operator has the right to buy down 2% of, so to take it down to 1.5% on a 1.7 million ounce deposit that's reserves, capable of producing 170,000 ounces a year for 10 years. Very low operating costs. The upfront CapEx is also a reasonable amount per the feasibility studies that are available, fully permitted. So this thing's ready to go. It just needs the sponsorship. Eldorado, I think, did a good job of stewarding the project through feasibility and getting all the permits. And now it's ready for an owner who wants to start digging a hole in the ground and pulling out gold. So, from that Q3 call, it sounds like they're making progress. They're out there formally talking about vending this, and there are many mid-tier gold mining companies looking for high quality assets that can be good platform assets, and this fits the bill. So I'm excited to see any kind of movement there on the sale front.
So whose portfolio do you think something like this would fit nicely into?
I think got somebody like an Equinox, Leah Gold, those companies that are operating, a Great Panther, for example, they're operating in Latin America, that know Brazil, that are doing gold, looking for growth. This has, all the markers of an asset that checks the boxes. It's got a feasibility, it's permitted, it's got over 100,000 ounces a year production. In fact, closer to 200,000 ounces a year. So it passes the smell test for a lot of these mid tiers.
And from the audience, I assume the operator would reduce to 1.5% NSR. Any sense of what this could mean for Sailfish?
Yeah. So our expectation is that this is a 1.5% NSR. The buy down for the 2% is $5.5 million US. And just to give you a sense for valuation, when we acquired this asset or this royalty, we paid $6.5 million cash and $5.5 million in shares of Sailfish. Those are U.S. numbers. So that's $12 million in cash and shares for what we were assuming was going to be a 1.5% NSR. So at those valuations, paying $5.5 million for 2% is what we would call a no-brainer. So for us, we've always assumed this was a 1.5% NSR. When we present it, we talk about it as a 3.5% NSR because that's what it is. But we always have this language here, and I can point it out here, where I talk about the royalty, which the operator has the right to reduce to a 1.5% NSR. That's always been our base case.
Okay, great. And I had one question around your royalty strategy and your compensation. So one of our audience members wants to know how you live if you don't take a salary.
Yeah, I saw that note come through. I think that was James. If people look at my bio, which I can scroll up to, and you read it here. So I co-founded Sailfish with Akiba. Sailfish was a wholly owned subsidiary of Marlin at the time. And so it talks about that. And then I also am the VP of Corporate Development for Mako. And I am also the executive chairman of Bonterra Resources. And I'm a consultant for Wexford Capital. So I have I have a lot of responsibilities. I essentially have 4 different responsibilities, but they're all interrelated. And through having those roles at other companies, I'm able to do what we think is the right thing for Sailfish, which is to focus on it, to work on it, to do everything that needs to get done. But when it's in its incubation phase, right? Because prior to San Albino turning on, we were receiving a small amount of cash from a royalty in Mexico called El Compás. So rather than taking cash out of the business, we said, you know what? We'll take shares. I think there's a lot of upside. I think the royalty model is a great model. We've got a portfolio of royalties. Let's run this thing and use all the cash to build it, to pay service providers and other people, not ourselves, so that we don't have to issue equity, so that we can have our shares be worth more at the end of the day. So, and we don't try to hide the fact that we're involved with other entities. We took a portfolio approach, and we have a gold mining company, we have a gold royalty company, and then we're also involved as the largest shareholders of Bonterra, which I think is a fantastic, suite of assets up in Quebec. But all 3 of them have Wexford as a common shareholder, and that's the answer to that question. So I'm not starving myself or my wife and my 3 boys, but I am taking a big cut in terms of cash compensation in exchange for what I hope to be a nice payout on the equity side.
And I think that leads really well into some questions that we have around how you differ from other royalty companies in terms of your strategy. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit. We get this a lot, and I gave a talk recently with Matt from Crux Investors, who I think does an excellent job of interviewing, cutting to the core of what these companies are, the junior mining companies. And he picked up on that right away. He said, look, Caesar, I have had a couple of royalty companies come on here and talk about the 12 acquisitions that they've done in the last 10 months. And you guys seem to be more selective. What's the deal? Like, what are you trying to do here? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to do things that make sense, that we can fund, that won't put the whole company at risk. I think we've done a wonderful job of putting a portfolio together that is just now starting to see realization, right? We didn't buy anything that was cash flowing, with the exception of the El Compás royalty, and that was a royalty that was transferred to Sailfish in exchange for reducing the stream on Nicaragua when Marlin and Golden Rain got together. So it wasn't like we were paying for it, and at the time it was still
being constructed and not in production. So we've never bought a royalty that's been paying. We like to buy things that have a lot of upside, but that are under the radar, not in auction processes. We like to do everything on a negotiated basis, special situations where you have, for example, Terrico, the acquisition we did in 2019 of the Spring Valley royalty of 3% on a 5 million ounce deposit in Nevada. I mean, you could wait your whole career for one of those and never have the opportunity to buy one. And we got it. And we got it because Terrico had, first of all, the asset is owned by a private equity fund called Waterton that doesn't need to put out press releases every day about what they're doing. In fact, they don't. So there was some, I should say, lack of knowledge, definitely lack of, marketing around the asset. So that was number one. Number two, that same operator had a convertible loan with Terrico for about $12 million US that was an overhang on the company. A lot of suitors, a lot of royalty companies that took a look said, oh, we think this is an interesting asset, but what's Waterton going to do with that convert? And all that uncertainty led to a situation where we were able to come in and say, okay, let's go down the path of doing something with you guys. And if Waterton wants to convert, we'll discuss that. If Waterton wants to be repaid, we'll discuss that. But that didn't scare us away from the situation. And it ended up being that we were able to acquire the asset. Waterton's converted directly into the royalty. So it would have been for, I believe, 45% of the royalty. And they ended up at the last minute not wanting to convert. So that we paid them out in cash, which is why we took on some debt from Wexford, our backer. And now we have a full 3% on one of the largest undeveloped gold projects in all of Nevada, in Pershing County, a place where mines are still being built and operated today, a friendly place for mining. And at some point, Waterton will sell that asset, and an operator will come in with a plan to pull gold out of the ground, and that will become a very, very valuable royalty to Sailfish, to the whole royalty sector. It's something that everyone's going to have to pay attention to because of the scale. At today's gold prices, this royalty is capable of generating net of tax over $10 million just from one single royalty, a year. So, our strategy is different because we come from different backgrounds. I'm not a geologist. Akiba, my partner, is not a geologist. We're finance guys. We're investors that have spent over a decade not only investing in this sector, but to also, being part of construction and operation of actual gold assets. We built and operated a mine in Mexico. We're finishing construction on a mine in Nicaragua. So I think that combination really puts us in a different, category than just about any of our peers. A lot of the mining guys are finance guys because this is a cost of capital game and a financial game. Some of them have geological backgrounds. Some of them may even have mining backgrounds, or they employ people who have that experience. Akiba and I have been directly involved with all of those. We've made loans. We've structured royalties. We've bought royalties. We've built assets. We've sold assets. We've shut assets down. We're building more. Another mine. So I think it really goes back to the people behind this company. Is we've just got a lot of different. We have a very different background than most of our peers. I'll just put it that way.
I think that's a really valid point and should be highlighted in this story. And for the record, Matt didn't say, "Hey, Caesar." He said, "Hey, Cesar."
Yes.
Which I think was the highlight of that interview.
Well, Matt is he's British, and I think he speaks or has a little bit of understanding of Spanish. He must like traveling down to Spain when it gets cold up there. But I think he did pretty good with the pronunciation of my name.
I don't know. I watched it and cracked me up. But I've known Matt for many years. We used to work together. He's a great guy. He's done such a good job with his platform as well. So here's one. We've got two questions. And the first one is, what is the plan proposed plan for shared distribution, i.e. one sailfish equals one swordfish or 2 for 1? And second question, what is the planned proposed amount of cash that Swordfish will start out with to get the ball rolling? Who will lead exploration? Are you planning to assemble a designated team, etc.? What can you tell us about the plan, I guess, is the core of the question.
I like this question. Whoever asked that question has been doing their homework. I mean, that's a very, very good point. So first of all, they know that the name we're planning to use, which is Swordfish. We've had marlin, Mako, sailfish, and now swordfish to complete the 3 billfish. So what we plan to do is so we haven't decided on the splits just yet. If we're going to be combining Gavilanes with Commonwealth, there needs to be a split of what value this one's being brought in at and what value Gavilanes is being brought in at. And once we determine that, we'll be able to tell people this is what you're going to get for each share of sailfish that you own, which is the question that's being asked. So that's in the works. Hasn't been finalized. We're hoping to be able to announce plans to that effect when the 43-101 is complete. So either in late March or early April, to be able to tell people definitively what we're planning to do with regards to the spin. And I think the more important question, that's a very important question, but also part of this question was, who's going to lead the exploration? Are we going to have a dedicated team? Can we say who that's going to be? I've been spending a lot of my time trying to recruit individuals to be a part of this. I already got a question, where do you get your salary from if you don't take one from Sailfish? How do you live? Well, I'm working on Mako. I'm working on Bonterra. I don't want to create a situation where we're also working on Swordfish. We will, and we'll be directors, and we'll be in the background. We're part of. We know the assets. We've acquired them. We've worked on them over the years. We're going to be involved, but we need dedicated management. So if anybody is listening right now that has any experience managing assets in the Southwest U.S. and Mexico, silver, gold, contact Deb. She knows how to get a hold of me. We're looking for individuals, for geologists, for people who will be running the company. I think I have a CFO picked out already, but I'm still working on a CEO. And we also work very closely with the team from Resource Geosciences, Matt Gray and his crew. They've helped out a lot with Commonwealth. We plan to continue to use them there. I talked to him today about helping us more with Gavilanes. He's providing input to the 43-101, but to actually have some of his team members in Mexico lead the exploration effort once we ramp that back up. And then the same question included a question about cash. How much cash ideally would we want in this entity at spinout? I'm thinking, anywhere from 10 to 15 million Canadian dollars, I think would be a good place to start. And we've been having discussions with potential strategic investors. And we're still working on those plans to figure out how to get that cash in, to do a pre-IPO round. We have a lot of options. So I think that answers pretty much all the questions.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So the rationale for 10 to 15 million, is that just to be able to do a couple drill programs? And
correct. So the 43-101s that are being worked on, as is customary, will have exploration recommendations. So they'll have a budget saying, you've taken the project this far. We think there are this many ounces. We think for this amount of money you can do this much more. Commonwealth, that will be more infill drilling than exploration drilling. It will be further metallurgical test work. It might even be some preliminary engineering. It might be more permitting, because that project is really a development project. At Gavilanes, I was with MDA this morning reviewing the work they've done so far. Wow, there is a lot of potential, so that will include mostly drilling, and it won't be for the most part infill drilling. There's 750 meters of strike from that was outlined in the original 2013 43101. It's wide open, and it's wide open at depth as well. But there's just a lot of opportunity. The way that the drill holes, and there were only 47 that were put in, were assayed, is that they were assayed selectively. So they didn't assay the whole hole. It was just wherever visually they thought they were in the vein. And so we'll have to go through and re-assay as much of that as we can. Probably twin some holes in areas where we want to get information that's more current, because you let holes sit around, or drill core sit around in a core shack, and you re-assay it. It might not look the same as when you drill a fresh hole. So we might need to do a little bit of twinning, but definitely a lot of re-assaying. We're reinterpreting the data as we speak, but drilling. The Gavilanes, is a great exploration property. I'm more excited about it today after learning about the way this was interpreted historically and how we're going to interpret it going forward, which means much higher grade, more tighter standards around what the domains are that are actually being modeled, as opposed to just lumping everything together and having these big areas, these big zones. So that's 10 to 15 million Canadian with those two types of programs. That should be enough to really get it going.
Okay, great. So just shifting gears a little bit, we've talked about a number of the assets, but we haven't really talked about Mako. And I know there's a number of Mako shareholders who are watching this in the audience that are, obviously it's a very exciting time for Mako. And do you mind providing a little bit of an update there?
Well, now I feel like that girl from the Brady family, where it's like, Marsha. Everyone always wants to talk about Mako, but I don't blame them. It's an exciting time for Mako, and my partner Akiba and I have worked very hard trying to get that going, and we're there. We've got we started producing through the concentrate. What I'm doing now is I'm going to share the cameras that we have set up to monitor the activity at San Albino. So rather than trying to describe in words what's happening there, I can just show you. So why don't I do this? I'll go to the. Sorry.
I will warn people, this made me nauseous last time when I did a full hour one with Akiba. But It's really cool.
Well, I won't do it for that long, and I'll just pan out and just kind of show you what's going on here. So this camera is on top of a communications tower. So it's one of the highest points, allows us to see, not only what's going on at the processing plant and the tailings over here, but also to see what's going on with the actual mine, which for an open pit, it doesn't look like a pit just yet. We're starting at the top of a hill and we're working our way down. So this is the mine. Right now, this looks more like a pyramid. And eventually what will happen once we get further down the hill is you'll start to see, what's going to become a pit. But things are moving ahead. We announced, when I say we, I mean Mako. Mako announced on Tuesday a financing with a group called Nabari that Mako has been working with to provide about $6 million to accelerate the ramp up of mining and processing of ore at San Albino, and also the drilling primarily at Las Conchitas that we have planned for this year. Because what we started to realize at Mako was that we had so many things that we have the ability to start doing now, but because of having a budget as we're in ramp up mode and not yet generating cash flow, we were unable to do. And so we said, this is silly. You've got one shot to make this to get on the right path to deliver on promises. Let's accelerate this. Let's get this thing going. And people have asked, why didn't you just go to Wexford? Wexford's provided capital to you guys every time you've needed it. Is there something fundamentally changed with Wexford? The answer is no. This is an undertaking. Really, it was Akiba, as the CEO of Mako, who wanted to prove that a true third-party lender, looking under the hood on everything, the corporate matters of the company, the contracts, the geology, the budget, the timeline, what we've been able to accomplish, the amount of money we have left, all the above, and to sign off and say, yeah, I'll do business with you guys, and that's what's happening here with Nebari. And I was part of the diligence process. It was extensive, so I'll give a little shout out to Nebari, who did an amazing job of really looking under the hood. I'm impressed with specifically one of their team members, Andre Kroll, who did a lot of the work. At least we interfaced with him, and they really did true diligence. We learned a couple of things about our deposit from working with these guys, because they were asking all the right questions. And so things at Mako are going well. We just need to start processing through the CIL so that we can start pouring big bars and not the little Hershey's Kisses that we've been doing out of our lab, to really get things going. And that's happening. By the end of the month, you should start to see this conveyor system, which leads out to the tailings, carrying tailings to the impoundment, because we're processing. So, and look, this is a way of checking on the company. I know Akiba does a great job on Twitter of updating people. So once this thing starts spewing tailings into here, you guys will know about it. You'll see it. We'll let you know.
That's so cool. It's quite amazing how quickly this was all built, and during a very difficult environment, both with the global pandemic as well as the hurricane season being more aggressive in Nicaragua this past year than previous years. So congratulations.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, Deb, as you know. We shared a lot of the challenges with you, and a pandemic and 2 hurricanes while we're in the middle of construction wasn't easy. There was a point in time when a lot of our workers were scared, to show up, rightfully so. Nobody knew what this virus was all about and who it was going to affect. And we had to remotely, I'm a bilingual, so I'm able to do a lot of these talks with our workforce to just convince people to stay. We had people that just wanted to go home. We had to provide them with the safety, not only masks and other PPE, but also medicine at site, facilities. We doubled our medical staff so that they felt comfortable working. And I'm happy to report that we've had very limited cases here. It's not even, compared to other places that have as many people, working or concentrated in. I mean, it's negligible, because the people here really respect the rules. They've been excellent at following protocol. We've instituted some strict protocols, and thank God, to this point, we're doing pretty good managing this pandemic.
Yeah, it's quite a thing. I did have a question from somebody that's watching on the YouTube channel. So in terms of the pandemic, you touched on some of the ways that it have impacted the project, but I think they just had a general question about how COVID's affected you, site visits, ability to evaluate other properties. And maybe you could just elaborate on the impacts that you've seen from COVID.
Yeah, going back to TZ, when last year going into Brazil was not advisable for many companies. So Eldorado, in their effort to sell that asset, really had to slow things down. Had COVID not happened, I think that asset would probably already be in somebody else's hands, and I would be talking about the press release that Company X put out on the development plans there and how we're on the path to production. But unfortunately, COVID slowed that down. At Mako, I just talked about having to be slowed down on the construction. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about the gold that's going to be coming out in the coming weeks, but I'd be talking about the gold that's come out for the past 2 or 3 months. We were really on a timeline to get this thing up and running, definitely before the end of last year. So it's had a material effect. We've done the best we could navigating it, but but now I think there's no excuses. We know how to operate in this environment. There are people on this call who've taken flights, who have visited family members, they've gotten vaccinated, they do rapid testing. We figured it out. My kids go to school, and there's no excuses now. There's enough time has passed, and for us, we're laser focused on just advancing everything that we have. Gavilanes, San Albino, Commonwealth, everything in our portfolio that's kind of interlinked. We're pushing it forward as fast as possible. And has it slowed us down in terms of doing diligence? Yeah, but when you've got, it's almost like in nature, you're not allowed to get pregnant twice. I mean, you can have twins, but when you're pregnant, you don't get pregnant in the middle of another pregnancy. And we're busy building San Albino. Once it's stabilized, we'll take a look at acquisitions. But for the time being, we've got our hands full.
Makes sense. Are you offering any production guidance for Mako this year?
No, we have to be careful with that because there is no feasibility study or even pre-feasibility study at Mako, and the exchange has rules around providing guidance. If we had been in production continuously for, I think, 2 years, even without a pre-feasibility, you can provide guidance, but that we don't meet those requirements, so we technically can't. But what we tell people is, look, we're going to be processing, to be safe, use a number of 7.5, 8 grams per ton at a 500 ton per day rate. For 2021, you can see we're not depositing tailings into the tailing storage facility, which means we're not commercially producing gold. So assume that we'll start at 500 tons per day, starting middle March, to be conservative, say April 1. And if that's the case, you can take those months and that grade and come up with your own numbers, and kind of extrapolate that way. And that's how we guide people.
Okay. And one question about your VP of exploration at Mako. So would there be any synergies or benefit with having Zoran involved to some degree with Swordfish on the exploration team, or will he have his hands full with San Albino and surrounding properties? What's the plan there?
Yeah, so whoever asked that question knows the company, knows Mako well, because Zoran is he's the genesis. He's been there since the beginning at San Albino, and he's crucial to that operation, especially on the exploration front. We're going to keep him focused in Nicaragua. There is another. So at Mako, we have 2 senior geologists, Frank Powell and Zoran Pudar. Frank has actually done a lot of work at Commonwealth in Arizona, and he's done a lot of work in Mexico. He was part of the discovery of the Trinidad property that was our first mine down in Sinaloa. Frank will likely get pulled to help out with Commonwealth and with Gabilanes. And we have, as I mentioned earlier, a relationship with Resource Geosciences, RGI, which is run by Matt Gray. He's got a team in Mexico. He's got a team in the US, in Arizona, and they're the perfect partner. They've been doing a lot of the work on Commonwealth. We're starting to get them involved on Gavilanes. They are the perfect partner to help on the exploration front with those. And then, as I said earlier, I made a little announcement. We're looking for people. So if anybody has experience in those parts of the world, let me know, and I'm happy to talk. Because once Swordfish is out on its own, we're going to need good people to focus on it and to push it forward.
Okay, great. That's it for questions, Caesar. Maybe we could just leave it with a few of the catalysts that you see over the coming quarters for Sailfish.
Yeah, the biggest one is cash. San Albino is turning on. You guys saw the video. You see the activity. A lot of you guys follow Akiba on Twitter. So in addition to getting a nightly serenade by him and his wife, you can get updates on how the project's advancing. And it's coming. That cash flow is coming. So that's something we've all been waiting for. We all know that royalty companies with cash flow tend to do better than those without. And then on the two pre-production assets, Tocantinzhino and Spring Valley, I didn't spend very much time on Spring Valley, but that has the potential to be a world-class asset. And things take time, especially with COVID. They're taking longer than normal, but those projects will be at some point in the hands of operators who want to build them, who want to produce gold from them. And as that gets closer and closer to happening, that's going to be a re-rate for us. I'd love nothing more than to be able to congratulate the new owner of Tocantinzhino or Spring Valley, or maybe it's Waterton that decides they want to build it. I'll congratulate them too. But whoever decides that they're going to start breaking ground on these projects, because that means cash coming to us. And I think investors will be very happy when they see what we do with the cash that comes our way, as we've been doing. And, I think as James Gerster asked, how do I live? Well, I'm not taking the cash that's coming to the company. I'll tell you that much. I want to give it back to shareholders, me included, the right way.
I think that's a really nice way to leave the webinar, Cesar, or Cesar. I'm going to have to work on it. Thank you for taking the time to not just walk through the silver asset, but really give us a broader understanding of Sailfish. So I appreciate you participating. Thanks to everyone in the audience for taking the time to hear the story. And I look forward to some of those catalysts coming to fruition.
Yeah, thank you, Deb, as always.